There are two types of stories, my friend. Now, probably everybody has their own ideas of what kind of divides stories between each other. But for the purpose of these videos, I'm going to talk about the stories that are just told directly by the storyteller and the ones that have a bit more audience participation or are interactive. Now, it should be argued that almost any storyteller can benefit at least from tailoring their story to their audience. After all, they're competing for the attention of their audience, especially these days with everything going on, life in general going on, and we're moving at a rapid pace. So you kind of gotta appeal to your chosen audience. And again, sometimes that looks as simply tailoring to their interests. Sometimes you may actually be taking ideas or advice from the audience over time, especially if you're creating a long-running story. Now, it should be argued for both pros and cons in either way, and I would probably advocate a balanced approach. But the thing is that generally tailoring to an audience can be a good idea. But there are stories that can be really interactive way where the audience is actively participating in them. This is especially highlighted in the realm of video games or games in general, I guess, where the outcome is dependent on what the player does. But in some of those games, it can be asked, do those choices really matter? After all, the story may actually be going along the same story beats. The characters may be going to the same exact locations either way, or they may be getting the same characters involved. So do those choices really matter? Now, one way to kind of highlight it is a morality system. Now, to be just a meter that goes either way, or it may be tracked separately. But oftentimes, many games have incorporated a morality system as a way of making choices matter. Sometimes it's simply because characters will approve one way or other. Sometimes there are bonuses. Sometimes it simply determines what ending you're in. May even change the final boss, um, even if you're going to the same location at the end. But the funny thing about morality systems is that when presented with a choice, most players are going to choose the good option over the bad option or the polite option versus being a jerk, even if in general they're falling into the damer mindset of just grabbing every resources that isn't part of the environment. But in most people, when faced with a story choice, they're going to choose the polite or good option. Now, if that's the case, why even have those choices? It just creates more work for the storyteller to create another branching path, especially if you really want to make it different. The reason for having those choices is that simply by having those choices, it makes the action of the choice itself feel more important because there is a toss. You're either gaining something and losing something else in return. Maybe it's a simple interaction, maybe it's something down the road, whatever, but there is a weight and a toss to making the choice. And this in turn highlights both the horror and the beauty of choices. Now, to highlight the horror, I want you to imagine with me that you have created the perfect system, whether it be for a government, business, or simply a club or whatever. It's a system that where everything is going to be taken care of and it will endure possibly for generations as long as everyone involved in it makes the right choices. And there's the T, as long as such and such happens. Because then we generally need people to make things work. We're generally working with people. People are part of life. But in these systems will endure as long as everyone involved makes the right choices. The issue is, it's someone's probably going to make the wrong choice at some point. And that's generally because they're choosing themselves, in a sense. They're choosing love of self. And now there's kind of two ways I can really think of to highlight this. And the first is the typical tyrant. Now, again, generally a person in government control can be seen as a servant to the people. They may be providing a safe and secure place for the people to live and so forth. They're providing stability to the people so that they can live their lives without fear of chaos, pretty much. Yet the thing is, once they start to be greedy for power, or wealth, or whatever they desire, and they kind of lose perspective on who they're supposed to serve, who they're supposed to love, and they're choosing themselves, then they kind of tend to become the tyrant that everybody knows. They're either longing for people to march to the beat of their drum and their drum alone, or they just see them as their disposable peons, basically, and they can do whatever they want with the people who they're supposed to protect. So then that's the typical tyrant actions, and will often end up with the tyrant being disposed of. Now you also have the example that's probably a bit more where everyone is on even ground. And it's simply a matter of everybody has to contribute to our shared goal, and then everybody can benefit from what we've gathered, basically. Now, how long is it going to be until someone decides, I actually don't want to contribute to that, but I still want my portion of the results? And maybe I guess the example I always hear about, I think, is maybe study groups, but then there are other examples where it can be seen where they all have a shared goal, and as long as everyone contributes to it, they're reached the end. Now, this could be because everybody has a speciality, so each one has a specific part to play. Now, you could possibly switch around the roles in case someone really wants to do something else. But the key here is that someone basically doesn't want to do the work, but they still want the benefits. Or they even don't care about anybody getting the benefits, and they're just going to go off and do their own thing. They may even actively work against providing those benefits, or do something that takes away from the benefits that they would have gained otherwise, and not be contributing anything at the same point. So then there are lots of options where if only they contributed, things would be going smoothly. But because they're choosing what they want to do over the shared goal, then the system falls apart. And now we have kind of the reverse horror, which is of the first part, which is the Todd's, but the Todd's in the machine. And now the thing with this is generally it's the people who are kind of part of like that evil empire regime, and they simply see themselves as Todd's, as part of the machine. They don't really have a choice in the matter. Now, depending on the story you're trying to tell, that could be the case. You could be telling a story of how the machine is just wears down people and breaks their will and forms them into the perfect tools for the regime to enact its will or control over everyone. But the other side of it is that you can also tell stories where there's pretty much always a choice. And this is what I think is actually true in the real world, and that we always have a choice even if we don't really think of it as being a viable option, or we can't even think of it as a choice. Now, again, we could argue that there are instincts that take over. But generally, I think once it passes a few seconds, you do have a choice on what you're doing after that. We just may not like the other options presented to it. Again, most of the times with the Todds in the machine, it's like they have to keep in line or they will probably be disposed of. So again, they have a choice in the matter. They can either keep in line and keep doing whatever the regime asks of them, or they can step out of line and possibly be disposed of, or they could do some good. Don't know what it is, but they generally don't act out of fear of being disposed of. So this highlights the fact that we are generally always choosing one thing over the other, even if the other thing is inaction. We're choosing to do this activity versus that activity. We're choosing to progress in this manner versus this manner. Or maybe we're choosing not to progress at all, which is still a choice. It's still an action. And this highlights the beauty of choice. It's because choice is an action, and thus has a ripple effect, or it's the cause and there will be effects from it. So whatever we choose, we're kind of potentially getting the ball rolling to make the choice harder to come back from, but again, it's sort of a thing that really does have impact. And this is actually seen even if it's sort of emotional or mental in a way, especially in regards to love. Because the fact is we can choose love, and we can also choose to not love, basically hatred or apathy. And the thing is that I think that is kind of the reason for choice and for free will. And this, now people tend to argue about free will all the time, but again, when you get down to it, the reason to have free will is to have real love. Because if all we could choose was love, then would it really be a choice? Would it really be love? If our only option was to just do this, do we really have a choice in the matter? Is there really an impact? Is there really a meaning behind our actions? But because we have the ability to choose not love, the hatred, the apathy, when we choose love, it makes it all the more real. It makes it all the more meaningful. It's a sacrifice. Again, oftentimes it can even be sacrificing self for another person, sacrificing what we want for what the other person wants. And then we see that involved it in with the systems. They worked as long as the person making choices loves the other people within the system to keep it going for them. So that is basically my thoughts on this. So why not feel free to share your thoughts on this in the comments below. And if you enjoyed this video, you can like and share it so others may enjoy as well. Anyway, I'm Jonah, and you've been watching Lionsman Media, where we celebrate stories and the lessons of them. Thank you for listening to my musings. Talk to you later, and have a great rest of your day.